Hi there, and thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast. We feature those who are in the process of overcoming or have overcome any type of life encounter, life obstacle that at the time seemed to be almost insurmountable. With this podcast, we have three objectives in mind. Our first objective is we want you to know with a confident resolve you are not alone. We want to work with you. We want you to know there are others who are working with you, who want to help you through whatever you are encountering, and together we will get through whatever you're experiencing.
Our second objective is there are multiple options for any life encounter you are facing. We want to help you develop a resolve that there are various options and solutions to any life dilemma.
Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If you're encountering something that was possibly a decision you made sometime in the past, and if you had the opportunity for a life redo, you would make a different decision. We want to help you with those critical thinking skills that can help you make an informed decision and not encounter what you're going through at the moment. We are the Cooper Culture, a veteran-owned business. We work with business personnel and families to develop and sustain connected relationship cultures within their families and organizations. That type organization is one where people feel wanted, appreciated, and genuinely a part of that organization. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty, who is helping me facilitate this podcast. Today we feature Marissa Levin, who discusses with us her pivoting over 5 different pursuits, jobs. Over a period of time, she expresses her desires changed, and her desires are a matter of her inner voice she has named Joy, but it's a matter of knowing who you are, what brings satisfaction, fulfillment, and that changed with her over time, as it does with most of us. As we learn our personal satisfactions, as we learn who we are, we do change over time. Marty, what are some takeaways our listeners can gain from Marissa?
Ron, I want to talk about how I appreciate Marissa talking about her father, the legacy he left for her, his example for her as she was creating all these businesses. She is now living his legacy and moving forward. It's an amazing story. And I want to say, if you're a father and you're wondering how do I relate, listening to this podcast will give you some great ideas of how you can relate to your children.
Marty, that is the role of a dad. We need to do whatever we need to do to have that connected relationship with our families, and it's very touching, Marissa's relationship with her dad. Let's listen and learn together. Marissa, it's good to have you with us. By a lot of measures, you would be characterized as the consummate entrepreneur, person who's always thinking, always on the go. You're at your 5th business, and through life, you have had to pivot to do a lot of different things, maybe change a little bit about what brings inspiration and fulfillment to you, along with what appears to be the multiple pivots. Your dad passed away, and he was very integral in your life, as I understand it. Marissa, our listeners are going to be very interested in knowing just how you made it through all of this. How did you keep going? How did you have the energy to keep at it and not say, man, I'm not sure life is worth it any longer? Marissa, it's great to have you with us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Marissa, can you put in your own words just a little top level, some of what you've been through, to include your dad, the businesses and so forth? Our listeners need your words to listen to just your entrepreneurial spirit.
Sure. So I'm a 30-year entrepreneur. I'm just launching my 5th business. So I've had three different types of exits, if you really want to look at it. My first business, I grew to about 14 million. I was in that business for 17 years. I walked away from that business because I no longer was the right leader for that business. So I put in a succession plan in place and I left that business. That was my first major pivot, from an entrepreneurial perspective, because I didn't serve the business as the CEO anymore. And quite frankly, that business was suffocating my soul. And so I put a plan in place in order to evolve out of it. Then I launched a second business, and that really was just me for a little while. And then when I decided that I wanted to grow it, I brought in a partner, someone who I have known for over 20 years, and put a strategy in place to actually build more of an international firm. And so we built that into a larger consulting firm. And then I sold that last year. And so that was a year-long process, and we completed that transaction last summer. In between, I had launched another business with another partner just based on my desire to want to help women business owners achieve at least $1 million in revenue. And I had a great partner, again, someone I'd known for 20 years. And we were very successful with that business until COVID hit, because it really lended itself more to an in-person model. And then we dissolved that business because she wanted to go one direction and I wanted to go another. But we kept the friendship intact, because whenever you work from a place of integrity, your relationships will, stay strong. So I dissolved that business. Those are three different types of exits. And then along the way, I launched my speaking platform. And now I've launched another business called I5 Conscious Leadership with another woman who I've known for 20 years. And we're going to build that with the intention to sell that within the next, say, 5 to 7 years. And that's what my focus is on now. So that's been kind of my entrepreneurial journey. I have two sons, 23 and 26. They are completely successfully launched. So that certainly has been an evolution. I just turned 56 and, I'm just super excited about what's ahead of me. I think my best life is ahead of me. I think I'm just getting started. And as you mentioned, I lost my father, who was my hero, really my hero. I lost him August 27th, which was about 5 weeks ago. And I'm just, really committed to following in his footsteps. I would define his life and legacy by 5 words: service, humility, loyalty, grace, and integrity, with family wrapped around all of that. And if I can endeavor to live that legacy through my own life, then I will consider that to be a very successful life.
That's a great tribute to your dad. Those are 5 traits of values. Marty and I focus on values. Marissa, as you're reflecting on the 30 years of pivoting, and I do want to put an emphasis on your dad, his inspiration to you, I'm processing what you're saying. What satisfied you 30 years ago is not what satisfied you 25 years ago, is not what was fulfilling 20 years ago, and maybe not 10 years ago. You maybe changed through time for whatever series of reasons, but Marissa, what brings satisfaction. It's an aspect of emotional intelligence is my term for it. It may be something different, but Marissa, what is happening in your life at the moment, what you need for fulfillment. If I have mischaracterized you, Marissa, please correct me, but our listeners are very interested in knowing, just a little bit of how that transition occurred over the past 30 years.
Yeah, so I love that question. I think that human beings, we are creatures of evolution. I know that we often hear that we're creatures of habit, but I believe that we're creatures of evolution. And I don't believe that we're meant to remain stagnant. I think it's important to listen to the single most important voice in our life, and that is our inner voice, because our inner voice really does know what is best for us. That's what's the voice that is connected to our heart and to our spirit. And I've always been really, really dialed in to that inner voice and just how my spirit feels. I actually have a name for her, and it's Joy is the name of my spirit. And I listen to her. When that voice starts to feel suppressed or sad or suffocated or stifled or discouraged, that to me is really good information that something's not working. And so it's about going inward and considering what is not working. And I just pay attention to all of the messages that my own inner voice tells me. I get interviewed by a lot of leadership experts. I do a lot of mentoring of young adults and students. And when I get asked the question, what is the one thing that you would tell your 21-year-old self or 18-year-old self? I always go back to making sure that you are aware of your intuition and that inner voice and that inner insight, and you pay attention to that, even if that means disappointing other people, because you alone know what's best for you. And there's a way you can follow that voice while also maintaining integrity in your own life. But that really is kind of what has guided me. And people often ask me, they're like, well, where did you find the courage to move on or to move through difficulty? And I believe that the most courageous I can't imagine not listening to that voice, because staying stagnant because you're afraid of something, to me, is not living.
What I'm hearing you say, Marissa, is you're at peace with yourself. When you make decisions, you need to feel that peace. And I may not be expressing it the way you would, and certainly use your terms, but our listeners need to know that the inner voice and just how that works, and having the inner peace that I'm about to make a decision and I feel that I have the peace of that decision I'm going about. And is that how you would express, or please put that in your own terms?
That's true. And, look, when we make these decisions, there's always trade-offs, because other people in our life have expectations of us. They may not want you to make similar decisions because maybe they need something from you, or they just want you to show up differently. It's finding that balance of saying, you know what, I'm aware that I may disappoint someone, but I can't do it at my own sacrifice. There's a quote, I've coached hundreds and hundreds of CEOs and executives over my 30 years through my coaching practice, literally hundreds and hundreds. And one of the quotes that I use when I coach is, you're not required to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. That's a lot easier said than done, but it's also connected to the oxygen mask analogy, that if you are on a plane and the oxygen mask drops, they tell you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first so that you can then help others. If we don't fill our own cups, we're not going to have anything to give anyone else. It's taken me a while to come to a lot of inner peace with maybe disappointing other people who had expectations of me. But I think communication can help work through that. I'll give you a perfect example. And I'm just very transparent just about everything in my life. And hopefully, your listeners will be able to kind of personalize, my experiences. I'm a melanoma survivor. And so I'm very, very diligent about my skin checks. I go every quarter, and I'm very grateful that my path didn't end that way. I also had a breast cancer scare, I guess it was 15 years ago, with some suspicious problems. And again, I was spared, right? And I don't take that for granted at all, because when you hear those words, you have cancer, it just changes your whole frame of life. And so I had to go visit my breast oncologist that has treated me for the last almost 15 years. And I had so much anxiety going into that appointment. And when I woke up that morning, I was like, I need to be at the beach. Like, that's my happy place. That's the place that restores my soul. And like that morning, I made the decision. And fortunately, we have a family home here. And so I'm able to just kind of escape. But I made that decision on the fly, listening to what was in here. To make that happen, I had to cancel a couple of in-person meetings for work and reschedule them. And I just really had to pay attention to what I needed in here. And I explained it. So, the meetings that I had in person, I just said to them, I came to the beach unexpectedly. Can we push it to next week? I listened to what I needed. And that, there's nothing wrong with that, being able to put yourself first for what you need, because then I'm able to be more for other people when I feel restored. So it's very important that we listen to that inner voice. We're not getting any awards at the end of our life for self-sacrifice. There's no award, we're not We're not getting a blue ribbon. We're not getting, any monetary award. Like, no one's cheering us for the level of self-sacrifice that we've endured. The life that we live is today. And so that's what I focus on.
Marissa, I wanted to ask you, you coach people, and there's the person that says, I'm listening to my inner voice, but I have a family member that's putting pressure on me. How can I feel okay and stand firm with the decision I feel like is inside me? And this is the decision I need to make.
So I love that question. I'm going to talk about someone who inspires me in that regard. And I'm not going to share her name just for privacy, but I have a very dear friend who has 3 young children. She's a business owner. She's married. She has 3 young children. I think her oldest maybe 11 or 12. She's a world traveler. And this is something that she needs to do for herself. She does a lot of solo world traveling, or she'll join different groups. And she goes a lot. One of her children asked her recently, why do you go so much? Aren't we enough for you? Her children asked her that. And, she said to them, what I do is not a reflection on you. This is something that I need to do for me. And I hope that as you grow up, you will learn what you need inside and you will do what you need. But it's not that you're not enough. It's that this is something that I need. So I think, women, and I have one of my keynotes is the soul behind the role. Women, especially, we take on so many different roles. Our roles are not our identities, right? Daughter, sister, mom, spouse, whatever it would be. Our roles are not our identities. Our roles are not necessarily reflections of our soul. And so being able to distinguish the two, delineate between the soul and the role, and be connected to your soul, I think is just part of what's needed to live a fulfilling life. If we suppress what our soul needs, the only thing that grows from there is resentment. This is, part of the reason why I left my first company, when I realized that I was no longer the person to be running it, just from the direction it went and customers and the way the company was evolving and other personal reasons. And I said to myself, I can always build another company. I cannot build another soul. And so it's being connected to that soul and teaching our kids that self-sacrifice is not a noble virtue.
Thank you.
I'm guessing you're reflecting a lot of your dad, Marissa, and I'm reading into what you're saying, that you and your dad likely had a very good, very close relationship.
You did.
I'm guessing you could always turn to Dad and just say, Dad, I'm feeling. Dad, I'm not feeling. Dad. And you and your dad could have those intimate discussions. And I mean, when I say intimate, I'm talking heart to heart. And I mean, it's very conversational, very meaningful, and you're connected. I'm supposing that's a part of the legacy your dad left. You can express it better than me.
Yeah, he definitely did. My beliefs are, that the soul is endless, and I feel still very, very connected to him. I miss him terribly physically. I miss driving in and seeing him and having dinner with him and just hugging him. And I miss him terribly. So what I've been doing, I've been writing to him because I'm a writer. And so I have a journal now, and I've been writing, I've written him a few letters already since he's been gone. And I find that really helps me, again, get what's inside, to get it out and to express it. And that's been really cathartic for me.
We know the benefit of cultures that emphasize connected relationships. I'm guessing, Marissa, that's part of what you emphasize as a leader, connected relationships, to know those with whom you work. And by knowing, that's more than just identifying a face and a name. It's knowing the strengths, knowing the values, the attributes, weaknesses. Is that a lot of what your leadership style is?
Yeah, actually, when I had my first company and had around 80 employees, that was the most gratifying and satisfying and fulfilling piece of running that company, was being connected to the people that worked with me and worked for me, and knowing that I was providing them a safe harbor and a space where they could grow emotionally, professionally, personally. And I was providing for them, for their families, and providing that amazing culture, which we did. I mean, we had an extraordinary culture in our company. That, for me, that was the best part of leadership, which is why when I left that company, the next company that I created was called Successful Culture, because I really wanted to help other leaders create environments and spaces for their people where they felt seen and heard and relevant and safe and connected to something larger than themselves. And now I'm carrying it across with I5 Conscious Leadership. But for me, that was the best part. And it wasn't always easy. I mean, I went through a lot of, we were very values driven at my company. Even when it was just me, the very first thing that I did with my first company was I created our values set. And I started that company because I left a company where I wasn't valued. And my mother taught me, you never let anyone else determine your value or your worth. She's been gone 9 years. So I left the first company because I didn't feel seen and heard and valued. I went in and I asked for a raise after presenting a very strong business case on what I was worth. And he looked at me, the owner, and he said, "You'll never be worth more than $34,000 to my company." And that is what encouraged me to start my own company. My undergraduate degree was an English major with a concentration in Shakespeare. So I had never taken a business course. Just kind of figured it out. Back then, there was no LinkedIn, there was no Facebook, there weren't women's groups. Here I was, this 25-year-old girl who had never taken a business course. And I just was like, I don't want to work for someone who didn't value me. And between my mom and my dad and the way that they were servant leaders in our community and the different lessons that they taught me about leadership. My dad, was a cabinet level position at NASA for 35 years, 40 years before he retired. And just watching them as leaders really provided a foundation for me.
So the business you are starting now, or let's just call it your fifth business, you are focusing on women, if I understand correctly.
I5 Conscious Leadership it's a consulting company for companies and organizations of all sizes, not just for women.
Oh, all right, good. And so, is culture one of your emphasis in the context of leadership?
So culture will be a result of our work. It's not that we're not going in there and saying we're here to fix your culture. My experience with how we ran Successful Culture was it was very timely, and focus was on culture. And, that was kind of when culture kind of came on the horizon. But this is about elevating the consciousness of the world through leadership, elevating humanity through conscious leaders. And so we've created a whole model around leadership that really teaches and indoctrinates leaders on intention, integrity, identity, insight, where they're seeing their people, and then inspiration. When you can elevate the consciousness of the leader and the awareness of the leader, that will cascade through the organization. And then the end result will be a safer and more productive culture.
Sure. Do you have a model where you kind of help the business owner assess their leadership and customize where they need their most help?
We do. See, I5 model, as I mentioned, the intention, identity, integrity, insight, and inspiration. At the very beginning, I have a master's in instructional design and organizational development. So I've always been very models driven, and we always start, you have to find a baseline. You have to know where you are. And with all the work that we did through Successful Culture International, working with hundreds of firms, going in and actually diagnosing their leadership, diagnosing their organization, things of that nature. I'm certified in the EQI, which is an emotional intelligence assessment. So we use the EQI for both self-assessment as well as 360-degree assessment. And then I'm also a certified Enneagram practitioner. And so we also use the Enneagram to understand the leaders and to give them insight into what their blind spots are and how they engage with the world. And so using the findings from the Enneagram and the EQI work that we do, we set the baseline to help them understand who they are, because self-awareness is the single most important thing of leadership.
For the business leader who may be listening now and thinking, this is the kind of thing we need to, let's just say, improve our culture, but we do that through leadership.
Right.
And statistics prove people leave or stay with businesses more so because of people, leadership, less so for the pay. How would a person contact you to employ your services, to have you come in? The business owner is thinking, we need your help.
Great. Thank you for asking. And we have a full curriculum for emerging leaders, mid-level managers, and then executives. We have 16 different courses around leadership, conscious leadership, communication, things of that nature. They can get to me through the website, I5 Conscious Leadership. That's the letter I, the number 5, Conscious Leadership. And then they can also find me on LinkedIn. My email is Marissa at I5 Conscious Leadership. And then my speaking platform is marissainternational.com. So Marissa Levin is the full name. They can Google me. I'm kind of everywhere. Got a book out on building advisory boards. They can find me on Amazon. I was an Inc. magazine columnist, so I'm kind of everywhere. They can just put my name in and they'll get to me. But I5 Conscious Leadership is the way to get to me easiest.
Is most of your instruction done in person? Do you do virtual, or how can this be done?
So we do both. We do virtual as well as in person. And we're also exploring creating a full online academy for conscious leadership using a different learning platform. But right now we're doing virtual and we're doing in person.
I think our listeners would be very interested in knowing a little bit more about emotional intelligence. It's a little bit unfair to ask you while we're recording, but would you consider possibly another episode where you talk with our listeners about emotional intelligence?
Yes. I'm happy to get into the details of the 5 elements of emotional intelligence and then the sub-elements of those and the importance of emotional intelligence. And one of the things that we have learned from research is that the higher up a person goes in an organization, the less emotionally connected they are to their people, because more and more people come between the leader and the employees. And so it's especially important for leaders to be very mindful to stay emotionally connected to their people.
Embedded, I think implicit in your statement is the effective leaders are the ones who do stay emotionally involved with their staff.
They do. I mean, anytime a good employee leaves or any employee leaves, so often leaders are surprised. And let me tell you, the writing has always been on the wall. And it usually has to do with the fact that the leader is either not listening or is just what I call tone deaf. They're just not dialed into what the employees are saying. Our employees are the single most important source of information to learn about our companies, the single most important source. And most of the time, leaders overlook how readily available that source. I mean, employees are dying to tell leaders what they're experiencing, what they're seeing, how they're feeling. It's the leaders' opportunity and responsibility to provide that platform. And when I was running my first company, instead of doing what I called all hands meetings, I did town hall meetings, and I would ask them in an anonymous survey, like a week before the meeting, I would say, what is it that I need to be talking about? What am I not seeing? What do you want to talk about? And I would give them an anonymous, safe place where they could contribute their voice to the conversation and they could tell us what we need to be talking about, because leaders all too often only direct one-way conversations when they're talking to their people, and they're missing out on the greatest opportunity to know what's happening in their company by not asking their people.
That is a very important topic our listeners need to know more about. Some of our listeners may be of the personality, I'm not emotional, trying to make me be emotionally attached to my subordinates. Well, that may be a steep hill to climb, whatever the term. But I do think my term I use frequently is it is appropriate to be appropriately vulnerable. And what I mean by that is I've been through stuff, not here to garner your sympathy, but just let you know that I too have been through, and whatever it is you're experiencing, together, a very operative term for Marty and me, together we can make it through. And I think that's a lot to do with leadership. I think our leaders can learn a lot from you, Marissa. Let's schedule another episode where we can go a little bit deeper and unpack a little bit more emotional intelligence and how can we effectively, emotionally relate to our staff, our families.
I would love that.
Thank you, Marissa. On behalf of our listeners, I want to thank you for your entrepreneurial spirit, being able to work through, pivot, and your relationship with your dad. That is extremely important. Thank you for everything that you represent.
Thank you. Thank you.
We appreciate having the opportunity to share our and our guests' life's experiences with you.
The Cooper culture advances organizations to achieve and sustain high retention rates, connected communication, and trust through personality insights and principled leadership. You can contact us at our website, thecooperculture.com, and you can contact us directly at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, Marty, at thecooperculture.com. We work with you to help assess aspects of your culture to advance the environment and people to their best performance. We do that through our staff of certified personal performance coaches, leadership trainers, keynote speakers, and DISC personality behavior experts. You can book a speaking engagement directly through our website by contacting us at ron@thecooperculture.com. We look forward to sharing our life experiences with you, some of which are profound, some of which are pretty funny. Some of those life experiences are ones we'll never do that again because we've been through stuff. We truly look forward to working with you, speaking with you, helping advance you in any way that we can.